All right, everyone, welcome to the Tonto's Demise Week 6 recap. Had to stop and think about what week it was for a minute there. The season's flying by real fast. We are just about at the halfway point because, well, maybe we are. Maybe Thursday night, I guess we would be at the halfway point since half of 13 is 6.5. Um, so once we start this week here, I guess that would be halfway. But anyway, this was an interesting week. A lot of high scoring across the board here. Nobody broke 200, but we had several scores in the 170s, and then Brian was almost hit 200. He was near about 8 points, 7 or 8 points short. But overall, the teams who won probably, for the most part, deserved it with putting up good scores here. So let's just get right down into it. I'm trying to think if there's anything this week worth mentioning or talking about beforehand. Because I feel like there should be something. You know what? I think there is. I do have a problem that I want to bring up with real quick with the podcast last week. Really, Free Fallin' is not a good song. You went back and watched the video. Do you realize the video was filmed in 1989 maybe? And so it was very current. Everything was pretty current at the time. A lot of the scenes are fit in with the lyrics. So yeah, it's kind of cheesy with the escalator stuff. It's in the mall, but you have to put it in the context of the time. And like I said, a lot of those scenes correlate to the lyrics. I think whenever they like show the teenagers at the fast food restaurant and something, they're talking about the vampires and things like that. And then at the end with the girl on the skateboard ramp, what were you expecting her to do? That's not the point. The point is that you're this. I think the point of the scene more is the huge open sky behind her and how you just the setup and the scenery there more than what the girl was actually supposed to do there on the skateboard ramp. So it's that you think that's actually terrible is very upsetting to me. But anyway, and you keep mentioning him every single week, and I'm pretty sure if I guess no one actually sat through the opening monologue a couple weeks ago that went on for how long, but I did do a top couple of Tom Petty songs in there, so and neither one of you guys seem to mention it. Anybody, you're like, well, nobody else has said anything or about their top favorite Petty songs or whatever, but I did, and it's in there. So, but you got to go find it if you want to know what it is. But yeah, it's out there somewhere. Anyway, all right. Just to get that off my chest, let's get back down to business and start this week with the defending champion trying to get his second victory, and he is unable to do it. Sorry, Gags. This week, he falls to Everybody Hurts, who I think has quietly gone on a 3-game win streak. He's started at 0-3, and now he's 3-3. Let's see. Everybody Hurts takes down the defending champ from Gags to Riches, 162.1 to 134.7. For Everybody Hurts, he's been playing musical chairs with his quarterbacks here this year so far, And this week he went with Jacoby Brissett from Indianapolis. 37 points from him. Your wide receivers, Golden Tate, 22.5. Looks like he's injured now, though. He's going to miss a couple weeks. Fortunately, I believe this is their bye week. So that limits how many games he's going to miss here, because you were already expecting him to be gone here in the upcoming week. Deshaun Jackson, 12.8, and Julio Jones, 13.2. Running backs, Leonard Fournette, who also got hurt, although his very first carry of the game, I think, was a 75-yard touchdown run. But it looks like his sprained ankle might not be as bad as it looked on TV. But anyway, looks like he got you about 22, 23 points. Devontae Freeman, looks like just under 7. Tight ends, you went with Ed Dickson, hoping for miracles from him after that one huge game that he had, chasing those fantasy stats. But it's very... if Ed Dickson ever scores, what was it? 25.5 points ever again, I would be shocked. Or even over 20 would be a surprise to me. Yes, so he had 7.5, and you had Will Fuller in the flex. Once again, just like last week, only 2 catches, but one of them was a touchdown. So you got a little bit over 14 points. Kicker Elliott from the Eagles again, 11 points on Yahoo, so it's probably a little bit more than that. And then you went with the Tampa Bay defense because Seattle was on a bye, and they got you... Yahoo says 14, mostly thanks to a defensive touchdown there. I think it was right around that, because they actually might have even been a little bit less than what Yahoo says, because they gave up a ton of points and a ton of yardage there, plus you lost, so that cuts 3 off of there. So it actually might have been, Yahoo says 14, but it might have been 11 maybe? Something like that. But anyway, it was still enough to get past from gags to riches. He had Drew Brees with 32.5. Devontae Adams, 16.5. Could be tough sledding here for the next couple, for the rest of the season with you guys, depending on some Green Bay receivers, now that Aaron Rodgers is down. So we'll see what happens with that situation. You got to be sweating a little bit now. But I think Hundley did catch the touchdown pass from... Hundley did... I'm not sure I don't know what I'm saying. Hundley, is that his... Because I'm not even sure of the guy's name. Is it Hundley? He did throw a touchdown pass to Devontae Adams. So maybe the Packers will be all right for the rest of the year. But if I were you, I'd be a little bit nervous starting those Packers wide receivers. Anyway, Rashard Matthews then, 11 points. J.J. Nelson, he actually got you 0 because his only stats I see are a rushing stat, and he's a wide receiver, so he actually got 0 there. Marshawn Lynch, 6.5. Doug Martin, looks like 11.5. 13.5. Looks like he had a 2-point conversion there. Travis Kelce, only 7.5. Gabriel, is it Taylor Gabriel? Yes. You had him in the flex. He got you 8 points. Justin Tucker, same as Elliott, 11 points here. And then the New England defense, finally doing pretty well here against the Jets. A couple turnovers, a couple sacks. Yahoo says 19. I think it was a little bit more than that. But the good news, Gags, is that even if you had started Adrian Peterson, which kind of... Oh. Getting a phone call here. Looks like it's Amanda. Hold on. Hey, babe, what's up?
Hey, honey, I didn't go to yoga, so just wanted to see if you were home yet.
Oh, you didn't go to hot yoga?
No.
Oh, I am actually just at the light. You always catch me when I'm like 2 seconds away from home, so I'll be there very shortly.
All right.
All right? Mwah, mwah. Mwah, mwah. I love you. I love you more. Mwah, mwah, mwah. All right, I'll see you very soon.
Then you hang up first.
You want me to hang up first?
No, you hang up.
Oh, no, you hang up first. Oh, sorry about that, guys. Happens every now and then. Did I finish with gags? Yeah, so what was we were talking about Adrian Peterson. Even if you had started Adrian Peterson, which kind of surprised that you didn't after blowing all of your fab money on him last week. And he went for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, 28.5 points. Even if you would have put him in the flex, I don't think the point difference was enough that even if you had put Adrian Peterson in the running back spot and flexed Doug Martin, I do not think that would have been enough to cover. So you lost by, well, it would have been actually really close. It looks like you lost by 28. And that's pretty much what Peterson scored. But let's say you moved Doug Martin to the flex and got the 15 points from him. That would have added about 8 points to your score. And then if you had let's see, Peterson as a running back, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it would have been close, but I don't think that you would have gotten quite enough points to cover that difference. So you would have lost anyway, so don't feel too bad about it. Anything else to say about this matchup? I don't think so. Everybody Ertz moves to 3-3 on his 3-game win streak. Hopefully, by my mentioning that will jinx you. I think Tree lost his winning streak after I mentioned it. So hopefully you follow the same. You're in 6th place. While Gags to Riches, he drops to 1-5. And he is in the basement, 12th place. All right, next up we had... we'll just go right down my line here. It's always, for some reason, Yahoo tends to put certain teams like in the same order every week here for some reason. So we're just going to go right down the line because that's the easiest thing to do. Second matchup was Skellahor Isotopes versus the Mighty Midgets. Battle of the Brother-in-Laws. And Skellahor Isotopes. It was a battle of 1-4s, trying to avoid going 1-5. Unfortunately for the Mighty Midgets, the Skeletor Isotopes come out on top. Final score here, 158.95 to 102.95. So a 56-point difference there. For the Isotopes, Carson Palmer, 40.5. Alshon Jeffrey, just over 11. Tyreek Hill, about 8.5. Marvin Jones Jr. in there for an injured Stephon Diggs. It actually turns out a pretty good game. Definitely got a lucky matchup there against New Orleans, as Jones goes for 21.5. Aaron Jones, Packers running back, he only got 4. Tevin Coleman, looks like a little bit over 9. Rob Gronkowski, a couple touchdowns for him this week, 26.5. And Gurley in the flex, an even 16. Excuse me. Kicker was Gano from Carolina. He got 11. All the kickers have 11 so far here on Yahoo, but it was a little bit more than that. And then the Atlanta defense, which actually lost the game, seemed like a prime matchup coming off their bye week, going up at home against the Dolphins there. I think they were winning 17-0 at halftime and went on to actually lose the game 20-17, and only had one turnover. I was kind of hoping for some turnovers, maybe a pick six or something in there from Jay Cutler, but not quite enough. I think Yahoo says 9, and I think that was the actual total there. Or maybe it was 12, something like that. But anyway, it was enough to get past Mighty Midgets this week. As we mentioned before, he lost Aaron Rodgers after only 2 completions there in the first quarter. And I had to figure out, it was a tricky week this week because I had to figure out these totals for multiple quarterbacks here who went out in the game here and got, also all these backups got their points just to add up and make sure everything was correct here. And I believe the Green Bay quarterback score ended up being 24.05 because Hundley had, I think, 3 interceptions to that 1 touchdown, so he didn't do too well. But it does make 2 weeks in a row when the Isotopes quarterback against has gone down in the game to injury. So maybe is that a trend that's going to keep happening? Probably not, because I think we go against Drew Brees this week, so highly unlikely there. Drew Brees ever been hurt except for that shoulder injury that he had that allowed him to move from San Diego to New Orleans? But anyway, so the Packers quarterbacks got you 24.05. Brandon Cooks, 15.5. Jaron Brown, only 1 catch for 30 yards, so 4 points there. You went with Jamison Crowder this week, only 4.5. Running backs, Amir Abdullah, 5.5. And Chris Thompson, who is no longer on your team, he actually would have scored you almost 18, but most of his stats were receiving. And he actually only got you 3.3. Kyle Rudolph, 9.5. Alvin Kamara, big acquisition from last week. He actually had a better rushing day than he did receiving, but he still got you 12.5. Your kicker, Bryant from Atlanta, 6 on Yahoo. So, of course, it's always tack on, but somewhere between half a point to 1.5, usually somewhere in that ballpark for your kickers. It's better than the negative points you got from the guy last week. Was it the Tampa Bay kicker? Anyway, and you went with the Washington Redskins defense, who seemed like they had a pretty good matchup here as well, going at home against the 49ers. But they actually ended up giving up a pretty good amount of points and yardage there. Yahoo says 9. It was probably just a little bit more than that. But anyway, it wasn't enough. Couple good performances from the Isotopes there. Marvin Jones coming through. Gronk putting up a good score. Enough to get past the Mighty Midgets, who struggle. There's injury struggles continue this year as he loses Aaron Rodgers for probably the rest of the season. And, well, actually, his roster is going to look a lot different. His starting lineup is going to look a lot different through injuries and trades here in the upcoming week than it does than the players I just went through there. But anyway, with that win, the Isotopes moved to 2-4. They are in 8th place, while the Mighty Midgets dropped to 1-5, and they are just above Gags in 11th place. Next matchup, we have New Gods Mad Titans going up against Possum Magic. And New Gods Mad Titans, despite I see some real low numbers here on his score, he's able to pull out the victory. Let's see, New Gods Mad Titans 177.2 to Possum Magic 143.9. So some tough matchups this week. So even in pretty much all the losing teams still put up pretty decent scores here. Well, in the 130s, that's pretty questionable. You're gonna have to get pretty lucky, I think, to get a win with 130 to 140 there. But anyway, New Gods Mad Titans, Carson Wentz, his new quarterback, 40 points, 39.5. Crabtree, just over 17. Emmanuel Sanders, 12.5. Although it looks like he might be missing a week or 2 or 3 with his ankle injury. Didn't look too good there. Looked like it could have been maybe a high ankle sprain, something like that. Sprained ankle, he's going to miss some time. No fractures though, just reading through the Yahoo news and notes there real quick. And you had Terrell Pryor, 5.5. Real disappointment this year. Thought he was going to really, all the flashes he showed last year with Cleveland, they're just not throwing the ball to the wide receivers this year like they were last year, the Redskins, I mean. Whether it's just not they can't work out their rapport and timing with Kirk Cousins or what it is, but said even Jordan Reed hasn't been doing too much. It's mostly been passing to the running backs there, and for the Redskins, it seems like, with a little bit of Deshaun Jackson's not there anymore. Who is there? The other guy? I can't even remember. Anyway, as for your running backs, Melvin Gordon had, looks like most of his stats came from receiving as well, but I think he scored maybe 2 touchdowns and he had 83 yards rushing. So that's a little bit over 20 points there from him. CJ Anderson, though, only 1.5. You played Kobe Fleener at tight end, who actually got you 0, which is heartbreaking in a game where the New Orleans Saints scored over 50 points, which kind of skewed, I guess, because I think they scored three defensive touchdowns, which is a fluke. So if you're planning on hopping on tonight to the waiver wire and picking up the Saints defense, probably a waste of your money. But hey, it's your money and you're free to do what you will with it. And in the flex, of course, Le'Veon Bell, just over 31 points. Boswell, your kicker, a couple PATs and a short field goal. Yahoo says 4. And then the other key to this win was the Houston defense. Looks like they had a couple interceptions, a touchdown. Did they have a? Yeah, they had a long touchdown, so you got a bonus there. Good matchup against the Cleveland Browns there. So pretty much as expected. Yahoo says 30. It was probably closer to high 30s, maybe 40, 42, something in that area. But anyway, so those low scores from Anderson and Fleener didn't hurt you this week because Boston Magic couldn't quite get enough. From his team, Alex Smith, quarterback, 36.5. Jermaine Kearse, just under 12. Humphreys from the Buccaneers, Adam Humphreys, I believe, just over 11. Newly acquired Chris Hogan, traded for LaShawn McCoy, who the number 4 overall pick, traded for Chris Hogan. All right, now I understand that we are playing a numbers game. We are not playing a name game. So I can understand this trade for the most part, because if you take a look at the last couple weeks, between weeks 2, 3, 4, and 5, Chris Hogan's totals have been 18, 22, 17, and 21. So, yeah, he's averaging about 19 or 20 points a week there over that 4-week span. Can he maintain that all season long? That's very questionable. As we saw in this game, he only had 1 catch against the Jets. He got you just under 3 points. So we'll see if that trade is going to end up being valuable to you or not. Talk a little bit more about that when I get to Brian's matchup here. Anyway, your running backs, you had Lamar Miller, only 4 points from him, Jerick McKinnon, who probably gave you incentive to trade McCoy, I would imagine, because and make Detling kick himself repeatedly for spending a huge chunk of his fab money on Latavius Murray, and I believe McKinnon got picked up for nothing, and here he is scoring touchdowns every week. He had 2 more this week, 1 rushing and 1 receiving, just under 70 yards rushing. So it looks like he got you about 20 points. So I guess maybe McCoy was a little more expendable than we thought. Then you had Hunter Henry, 14 points. In the flex, you played Gallman from the Giants. I'm not even sure what his first name is. Wayne Gallman. He got you just over 5. I guess he's one of the... looks like he is maybe second fiddle to Orleans Darkwa there, but we'll see what happens. Maybe it was just the way that game went. But I think you spent a lot of money, spent a decent amount of your fab dollars on him, and yet to be determined whether that money is going to be worth it or not. Let's see. Then your kicker, Robbie Gould. Surprise. Where did he come from? I didn't even know he was still in the league, but I guess there he is. For the San Francisco 49ers. A couple field goals. Actually, no, 1 field goal and a couple PATs. 7 points there. Then, fortunately for you, you had the Minnesota defense going against the Aaron Rodgers-less Packers. Looks like they had a couple turnovers, a couple sacks, didn't give up a whole lot of points or yardage. Yahoo says 19. I think it was closer to about 30, 32, something in that area. But it wasn't enough to get you the win here, because even though your quarterbacks were pretty even, big difference there. Well, it wasn't a huge difference between your defenses, because Houston and Minnesota both did pretty well. But the difference maker here was definitely Jimmy's running backs here, because Le'Veon Bell over 30, and then Melvin Gordon with a couple touchdowns, getting over 20 there, and some decent scores from the receivers there, so it was enough to swing this one in favor of New Gods Mad Titans, who I believe was screaming and crying about how terrible and unfortunate this season is going for his team just a week or two ago. But he gets the win. He is 4-2, so not too much to be crying about, at least thus far this year for you there. So let's see. In 4-2, you were in 4th place, while Possum Magic, his winning streak comes to an end, and he drops to 3-3. He is in 7th place. All right, next up, I already mentioned Brian's team there, Hillbillies on PCP, going up against the Dubsy Hooligans, who are now the friggin' Laser Sharks. Even though, despite putting up a pretty good score, a score I would take every single week and expect to win more than you would lose, but not enough this week. I know exactly how you feel, Kevin, but you go down to Hillbillies on PCP. Final score 192.85 to 170.65. So for Hillbillies on PCP, he's been going with Deshaun Watson the last couple weeks, who once again hasn't been putting up a huge amount of completions or yardage, but he's been getting touchdowns, so that always helps. It's from watching that Kansas City-Houston game last week, it seems like, and I haven't seen a whole lot of Deshaun Watson other than that. I've actually seen it, but it seems like he has a tendency to so he only had 17 completions, where he gets in trouble and just chucks the ball down the field 30, 40, 50 yards, and his guys are jumping out, actually coming down with these catches here. I don't know how long that is a maintainable way of doing things here in the NFL. I think defenses are going to start to catch on to that and come up with better ways to stop him. Like I said, I'm just basing it on what I saw in that one game versus the Chiefs. But even though they were kind of in comeback mode towards the end there, it just seemed like he was just tossing it up, throwing it down, from the 50 or 40, getting in trouble and just, chucking it and hoping for the best, and just fortunately having the dumb luck of these passes actually getting caught, even in like double and triple teams, or just the guys actually jumping up and catching it. So that seems like more luck to me than anything else, and luck is not something that will get you wins in the or get you good scores and wins in the NFL for very long. So we'll see how long Deshaun Watson can keep up his pace here. 41.5 points. Antonio Brown, another great game, 32.5. He is by far, I think, the leading wide receiver in the league this year. He's been at 27 or more 4 of the 6 weeks so far. So he was certainly fitting of being the number 1 overall pick. Definitely you made the right choice there. I doubt it was in much question anyway. Then let's see, Demaryius Thomas had one of his better games of the year so far. Over 100 yards on 10 catches. But, it was his best game so far. But he did lose a fumble and was hobbling around a lot too. Maybe it looks like he injured his ankle as well. Maybe not as bad as Sanders did, but he stayed in the game, but he was definitely limping around there, so that'll be something to keep an eye on. Other receiver, Adam Thielen, no digs this week, so 18.5 points from him. He was the main target. Jordan Howard, no touchdowns, but 167 rushing yards. So good score there. And then McGuire from the Jets, 2.5. Your tight end, Delaney Walker, 5.5. Let's see, McCaffrey in your flex, hardly any. I don't know if any of these, he had any rushing stats here. But yeah, again, I think this isn't the first time he's gone for 10 catches and a receiving touchdown. Looks like 10 for 56 and a touchdown, so that's, 21.6. So he must have had like 8 rushing yards or something like that. All his stats are coming from receiving. 22.5 points from him. Your kicker, Lutz from New Orleans, another 11 from a kicker there. And then Denver defense. Thought this one would actually put you up over the 200-point barrier, but they actually didn't do very well against the Giants here, who, for all intents and purposes, it looks like the Giants are actually playing with the attitude of, we've got nothing left to lose, so we're just going to go out there and there's no pressure on us. We're just going to play and just, go out there and leave it on the field. So their season is essentially lost, I think, at this point. They started, 0-5. So their playoff chances are slim. They lost a lot of their best players to injuries and things like that. So they're still going to be a dangerous team, obviously, from how their performance there. Like I said, whenever you get a team who's kind of has nothing to lose, that kind of pressure is off of them, who knows what they're going to go out there and be capable of, because they're not going to feel that pressure. Teams are going to, I think, underestimate what they can do, and you might end up with a handful of games that go just like this one here, where they upset the Broncos. Let's see. Yahoo says 12. I think it was right around there. But anyway, couple big scores there. Antonio, said Demaryius, Jordan Howard, McCaffrey. Good enough scores to get you almost 200 there. Enough to get past the friggin' Laser Sharks, who was the other team that had some quarterback issue in this week. And you can check, if you double check and make sure. much better situation here for you than Mighty Midgets had, because Jameis Winston, after 5 completions for 61 yards, he went out with a shoulder injury. I believe Ryan Fitzpatrick is the backup quarterback there. He came in. So even though Jameis Winston only got you 8, the Tampa Bay quarterback total, according to my numbers, ended up being 54.55. Because he put you up, they ended up with over 300 yards passing. I think Fitzpatrick had some rushing stats there. So you got a good score there from your quarterbacks. So 55 points. Mike Evans, 18.5. Nelson Aguilar, 15.5. I'm not even sure this guy's name either. Ricardo Lewis from the Cleveland Browns, 5.5. You're starting multiple Browns. That's a recipe for disaster, Kevin, if I do say so myself. Isaiah Crowell, just under 6. Mark Ingram, 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. Zach Ertz, 2 touchdowns on his only 2 catches of the game for 18 yards, 15.5 points there. Buck Allen in your flex, 9.5 points. Kicker, Fairbairn from the Texans, looks like a little over 5. And then your defense was Arizona. Even though this game ended up as your defense versus your quarterback, it ended up being a high-scoring game, but they did have a couple turnovers, and it looks like 1 sack. Yahoo says 10. Might have been just a little bit more than that, because I don't think they gave up a whole lot of rushing yards, but they definitely gave up passing yards there. But that 170, not enough this week against Hillbillies on PCP, who said was going to mention a little bit about Brian's team in a trade here, because he now acquires LaShawn McCoy for a wide receiver who he essentially had no need for anyway. Looks like he's got... so he traded away Chris Hogan, although, let's see, Devontae Parker has an injury. He didn't play this week. So that could be a slight issue for you there down the road. Your only other running or wide receiver is Tyrell Williams from the Chargers. I believe he had one pretty big game a couple weeks ago, mostly from a long touchdown, I think. So yeah, he had a 23-point game, but the rest of his games have been, for the most part, 3.5 points or less. So your wide receiver depth is now a little tricky. Although, say, Demaryius Thomas has already gone through his bye week. So you're going to be... So you've got 4 good ones there, at least, with Brown, Thomas, Thielen, and Parker. If Parker's injury lingers, that could cause some problems for you there. And so Demaryius Thomas, he's injured as well, so you're going to have to hope for some things to keep falling your way. But anyway, all things considered, though, if you basically take Hillbillies on PCP, their Week 6 roster, Watson, Brown, Thomas, Thielen, Howard, McGuire, Walker, McCaffrey, Lutz, and Denver defense. The only weakness there is McGuire, and now you're plugging him in with LaShawn McCoy. So, as much as it pains me to say this, and will be making Brian grin from ear to ear, that trade really gives the Hillbillies on PCP no weak spots in his starting lineup. Everything is solid. He's going to be tough to beat every week. He is in first place. I think doesn't have the highest point total, but he's creeping up there, gaining on Justin. But if I was to say right now, hopefully putting the curse on you as well, I would have to say Hillbillies on PCP, as of right now, have to be the favorite to win the Tonto Bowl at this point in time. Said barring any serious injury to your players, that said you plug in McCoy for McGuire here, and I see no weak places in your starting lineup. Everything is solid. McCaffrey got him in the flex every week. He's getting nothing but receiving stats. Antonio Brown's Antonio Brown. Business is booming. So it's going to be tough to get some handsome losses here on Hillbillies on PCP this year. So at least that's my take on it. Hope so. Like I said, hopefully I've just jinxed you into getting maybe some injuries here or some underperformances from your guys, at least. The only good news for me is I already played you. I don't have to worry about it for the rest of the season, at least until possibly playoff time here. But you're well on your way to the playoffs, and I am well on my way to not making the playoffs without a real resurgence here from my team. But anyway, enough blah, blah, blah. I see I'm at 40 minutes already. Hillbillies on PCP defeat friggin' Laser Sharks. Hillbillies 5-1. You're in first place. Laser Sharks, you are in 9th place at 2-4. Next we had previous first place, Shawshank Athletics, going up against the highest scoring team so far, FC Bahoric, and previously undefeated Shawshank Athletics falls to FC Bahoric 170.2 to 139.15. Let's see, for FC Bahoric, Matt Ryan, another underwhelming performance. Let's see, 37.5 points, which is he's been scoring the exact same thing pretty much every week since week 1, when he had 45, and say week 2, 36.5, week 3, 37.5, week 4, 33, and now in week 6, 37.5 again. So he's been right in that ballpark. From a quarterback, you're kind of hoping to get at least a couple 50, maybe 60-point performances out of each year. So, hey, maybe those are coming down the road here. Falcons already had their bye, so you'll be probably getting him the rest of the season. So maybe better times are down the road for FC Bahoric and Matt Ryan here, so watch out for that. Wide receivers, Keenan Allen, 9.5, Pierre Garcon, 10.5, and Larry Fitzgerald, almost 28 points against the Tampa Bay defense, who is getting shredded by, I think, every team that they play here so far this year. Your running backs, you went with Gillislee and Blunt. Gillislee, 2.5 to Blunt, 8.5. Tight end this week, you went with Austin Hooper, and turned out a decent game from him, almost 12. Kareem Hunt in your flex, an even 16. Your kicker, Prater, 8 points, a little over 8. And then the Los Angeles Rams defense did pretty good. I believe they ran the opening kickoff for a touchdown. So that was 9 points there. I believe they added another defensive touchdown. Yahoo says 29. I think it was actually closer to 40, 42, something in that ballpark. I did not actually write it down, so I'm not sure what it was. But usually I only write things down if it's something notable. Like, what was like in week 1, whenever Jacksonville's defense went crazy? And didn't the Rams defense go crazy that week? Let me take a quick look at my notes here. That's right. I got each week's here. In week 1, Jacksonville's defense had 52, and the Rams defense had 60. So, if it was anything like that, I would have written it down, but it wasn't quite that much this week. But it was enough to get past Shawshank Athletics, who had, much like Matt Ryan, a kind of disappointing point total from Tom Brady. Pretty much the exact same thing, 37.5 for each of those guys. Your wide receivers, Kelvin Benjamin, just under 19, his best game of the season so far. And DeAndre Hopkins, just like Will Fuller, he only caught 2 passes, but one of them was a touchdown. Just under 10 points from him. Alan Hearns, 6.5. Jay Ajayi, looks like 16. DeMarco Murray, let's see, I'm not sure what his rushing stats were. Yahoo's only showing his receiving stats, but he did have a rushing touchdown. Let's see, looks like he had about 40 yards rushing, I would say. Tight end, you went with Griffin from Houston. He only had a couple catches for 50 yards, but he did also have a 2-point conversion. So just over 10 points there. In your flex, Randall Cobb, only 5.5 points from him. Looks like he might suffer too with the new quarterback there. So we'll be interesting to see how that pans out for the rest of the year for Josh, Detling, and Gags, who were pretty heavily reliant on, said Aaron Rodgers, staying healthy this year. Let's see, Butker, the kicker from the Chiefs. He had a couple field goals, a couple PATs. Yahoo says 8. And then Jacksonville defense. So this was a matchup of defenses and swung in favor of FC Bahorak here. Yahoo says only 9. I think it was actually pretty close to that because they gave up a decent amount of yardage to there. Too many points, and you take off the points for the loss there. So Yahoo. So I think right around 9 was correct, maybe 12. So that was a big difference here in a 30-point margin of victory. Pretty big difference there from the defenses, and Larry Fitzgerald putting up a big game this week. So it was enough to knock off Shawshank Athletics. So we no undefeated team so far. I'm pretty sure this was a little bit discussed last week, what the best regular season record has ever been, and I believe it is 11-2 as far as I can tell, at least going back about 10 years since we changed the league to 12 teams. I want to say 2008 is when we started. 2008 or 9 is when we jumped it up to 12. So it's been about 10 years. And the records are only accurate. As I've mentioned several times before, that's about as far back as the records we can go to having them be accurate, that we can go back and look them up. But I believe 11-2 is the best regular season's record that we've ever had. So we'll see what happens here this week or this season. Will we ever have a 13-0 team? Will be interesting to see something like that happen. But the league is way too competitive and all over the place from week to week. I think for anyone to ever go 13-0, it would take a miracle. But miracles happen sometimes. Anyway, enough ranting here, right? Shawshank Athletics, you lose. You're 5-1, but you're still sitting pretty in second place. And with the win, FC Bahorak is 4-2, right behind Shawshank Athletics in third place. And then the final matchup, Space Antelope versus Disco. And this one went to Space Antelope, 144.8 to 132 for Disco. For Space Antelope, Kirk Cousins, 58 points. Jordy Nelson, 12. T.Y. Hilton, 3. Devin Funchess, 6.5. Latavius Murray, your running backs here. Murray and is it Jalen Richard from Oakland? Looks like Murray had just under 3. And Jalen Richard, all of his stats came from receiving because he actually had -1 rushing yard. So once again, a player from Space Antelope puts up a negative point total. Not the first time this year that's happened for you, I believe. You've had your defense. A couple weeks ago was at the Baltimore-Jacksonville game, and your defense I think scored -3. So, and did you have a kicker score negative points at some point this year too? Possibly. Could be thinking of something else. But anyway, Safarian Jenkins, your tight end, 16.5 points. He might have had a second touchdown, but there was inches from having a second touchdown. But he lost control of the ball, was out of bounds, and didn't get a touchdown. Controversial. ending to that game there. Anyway, still 16.5 points, pretty good. Your flex, you went with Amendola. He got you 7. Hopkins, your kicker from the Redskins, got you 7 also. Maybe a little bit more than that, but it looks like he's on IR, so you're going to have to do something about that. And then the aforementioned Ravens defense, who scored -3 a couple weeks ago, they actually had 2 kick return touchdowns, and they were both long touchdowns. So you got 2 long touchdown bonuses this week. Looks like they had a couple of turnovers, also a couple of sacks. They did really well here against the Bears, even though the Bears had, Jordan Howard had 167 rushing yards. So you gave up too many. They gave up a lot of points. They gave up, so they actually ended up losing the game. So they gave up too many points, -3 for the loss. So they had all those rushing stats. So despite all that stuff that happened, the good stuff, Yahoo says 25 with those bonuses, but with the yardage that they gave up, I think it actually wasn't too much more than 25. Maybe it was, sorry, I'm trying to remember here what it was, but I want to say it actually might have been like 30, 33, 36, something like that. But anyway, those were the big difference makers here. Kirk Cousins and Baltimore's defense, because there's really not much else that happened here for Space Antelope, as the 140 score of 144 will tell you. But it was enough to get past Disco this week, because his quarterback, Matthew Stafford, decent score again this week, 43 points, but it's 15 points behind Kirk Cousins, though, so that definitely hurts you. Your wide receivers, I think when the season going into the season, easily the most frightening wide receiver core in the league, probably put together in quite a while. Michael Thomas, Amari Cooper, Jarvis Landry, Odell Beckham Jr., Martavis Bryant. Those 5 guys, I mean, it's hard to think of a better wide receiver core than that we've seen in a long time. But anyway, just a lot of underperforming. Of course, we all know about Beckham Jr., his injury there. Michael Thomas, only 4 points. Amari Cooper, 7.5. Jarvis Landry, the one bright spot here for you, a little bit over 20. Carlos Hyde, he had 2 touchdowns, but I'm only seeing his receiving stats here again. So he, just like DeMarco Murray, so he must have only had maybe 30 or 40 rushing yards there. Marlon Mack, running back, he only had 18 yards, which I just want to comment on that real quick. Having watched that game on Monday night, I don't understand why I think Mack got 2 carries and then didn't really do anything the rest of the game. Even though he was in there, if you watched his first carry of the game, I think he just blew through the line and was 15 yards downfield before you knew it. And it was like, they're like, this is why they drafted him so high, blah, 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 blah. I mean, he looked great and fast and so much better than Frank Gore. And that was it in terms of giving him the ball and chances. I said, I'm pretty sure he only had 2 attempts. And that first one said he just blew through the line and looked great. And then they just stopped giving him the ball. And it was all Frank Gore. Like, come on. He's clearly the future there. But the future is not now, unfortunately, Disco. Then your tight end, you had Njoku from the Browns. He had 2 receptions, and he only scored 2 points. So he must have had 2 catches for 0 yards somehow. All right. In the flex, you went with James White, 8.5 points. Gostowski, your kicker, only 4 on Yahoo. And then you went with the Chargers defense. A couple turnovers, a sack. Did pretty good there against Oakland. Yahoo says 13. probably closer to 20, I want to say. But it was not enough. So despite 20 points from Landry and a decent score from Hyde and your defense, so there was not enough to get past Space Antelope this week. So he got a big score from his quarterback and his defense. And said in this league, if you get, you can be carried to victory every week by your quarterback and your defense. You're not going to get 35, 40 points from your defense every week. You're not going to get 60 points from your quarterback every week. But sometimes the stars align, and you do get those things. Said Kirk Cousins has bouncy, but just want to see if he's got. So he's not going to get 58 every week, but he's actually. It's kind of funny here. He's been bouncing back and forth between 58-point scores because he looks like he had a 31-point score and then 58 in week 3, then back to mid-30s, and then the bye week, and now he's back to 58. So he's going back and forth between 35 and 58. So whoever's playing Detling this week, expect Kirk Cousins to do about 35 points. So be interesting to see if that trend continues. But anyway, not enough for Disco this week. Space Antelope, he is now 4-2 with his win. He's in 5th place, while Disco drops to 2-4. He is down in 10th place now. All right, I believe that is all of our matchups. The knockout pool is Josh this week. He is eliminated. I believe mentioned it on the line app. So that leaves the teams still good. The teams that are still in the knockout pool here, just take a look at my sheet. The teams are the Isotopes, the friggin' Laser Sharks, Hillbillies on PCP, FC Bahoric, Space Antelope, and Everybody Ertz. So Craig, Bean, Brian, Justin, Jay, and Detling are still alive in the knockout pool. Take a quick look here at week 7, see what kind of matchups we have, how they're going to affect the standings here into the next week. And for you, Brian, I will mention that the symmetry here we have of the standings, 2 5-1s at the top, 2 1-5s at the bottom. Then we have 3 4-2s and 3 2-4s, with 2 3-3s sandwiched in the middle. So we've got 2 3 2 3 2. So gotta always love that symmetry there. So this week, let's see. We've got a lot. So we got a bunch of 4-2s, 3-3s, and 2-4s. They're all fighting for playoffs to keep getting some wins and maybe fight their way up for playoff spots here. Looks like this week we've got the Isotopes versus Gags. Isotopes trying to climb their way back up. Gags, don't want to say he's done for the season, but he's definitely on life support at this point. But he could definitely play spoiler here as for the Isotopes as they try to climb their way back up. Disco also looking to climb back up, but he's got a tough matchup against New Gods Mad Titans. The 3-3 teams actually are going against each other, so one of you is going to get the 4 wins. Everybody Ertz and Possum, so that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. Let's see. We have FC Bahoric versus Laser Sharks. So there's another 2-4 versus 4-2. Tough match again. Another tough matchup for the 2-4 team, who needs to get a win, but is playing one of the tougher teams in the league so far this year. Another good matchup is going to be a battle of the podcasters. Brian versus Detling, 5-1 versus 4-2. And then we got the Mighty Midgets versus Shawshank. So we'll see what happens there with the Mighty Midgets. Just like Gags to Riches, he is definitely on life support for the season at 1-5. Can only afford to lose maybe one, really only one, 2 more games and you're out. Trying to sneak one past Shawshank Athletics this week. Maybe knock him down to 5-2. As said, Hillbillies and Shawshank are already at 5. So it's as we all know, it's a race to 7. So those two guys are already well on their way. But hey, anything can happen. So yeah, we definitely have some interesting matchups here this week. But some tough spots for some guys here. Disco, you got to feel like you're in a tough spot. Kevin, you feel like you're in a tough spot. This could essentially be so that we've got a lot of the top teams are going against the bottom teams. So either those bottom teams, you got to start making your push. You're gonna have to knock off some of those higher teams. But if you can't do it, you're going to be in some tough spots here. Even the Isotopes, if they lose, they're going to be in a tough spot right there, right alongside Gags to Riches here. Getting that 5th loss is definitely puts you in a real difficult playoff position here, because you're getting those if they get those 5th losses, the guys you're going up against are getting their 5th wins. So it's going to be, the playoff picture might already be starting to take shape here. I think this week's results could really start to formulate what the playoff picture is going to look like. So if those 2 and 4 teams can knock off some of those 4 and 2s, it might change things around a little bit. But I said, anything can happen. I think the records are never really indicative of how good some of these teams are. Who knows what can happen from week to week here. So each team, really, every team is good enough to go out there and get a win every week. It's just testament to the league and all the guys in it, and that all of you, I should say. But so this week could be a big week in determining what the playoff picture is going to start to look like here. So, of course, me personally, I'm hoping for it's going to be a week for the underdogs here. So rooting for Disco, rooting for Kevin, rooting for the Midgets. I guess I'd have to say rooting for Detling, I guess. To knock off the Hillbillies there. A tough matchup here. He's the highest projected score for the week coming up. And hopefully the Isotopes can... they're not the underdog in this matchup here, but it's still going to be a tough one there. So, all right, that's enough for me. I see we just climbed over an hour here, so... All right, that's enough, and good luck to everyone here in this upcoming week, but good luck, especially to me. So, all right, thanks, guys, and we'll see you back here again after week 7. So good luck, and yeah, see you then. Thanks.